let's take a look at the Treasury's IT budget, because there are a few things about this $4 billion top line that actually make it fairly unique in the civilian government. First of all, it's a fairly significant increase from last year's enacted IT levels. So unlike most civilian agencies, we're anticipating some growth in IT spending here, although a lot of that does depend on what happens with appropriations. Almost all of that increase is coming out of the IRS, and almost all of that is going to support their Affordable Care Act systems. The second thing that we see at Treasury is relatively little off-books IT spending. So unlike every other agency that Tom and I will discuss today, Treasury does a very good job of tracking and reporting on their technology spend, which means that the number you see here essentially tells the whole story. Finally, you'll notice that a vast majority of that $4 billion is going towards the IRS, with the bulk of the remainder at fiscal service, which means that the departmental CIO really is not a major player here.
So the vast majority of Treasury's IT spending goes through three contracts. First is the IRS's TIPS 4 vehicle, and then Schedule 70 and SUP 4. Now, if you really focus on TIPS 4 primes, you're going to be able to get a slice of that IRS development pie. You really want to form a strong partnership, and please continue to leverage your channel infrastructure provided to you by Immix Group on SUP and Schedule 70.
And generally, when we talk about Treasury, we go to great lengths to point out that IRS really is the driving group here, and you can see why if you look at their budget. But I want to make sure that we discuss the fiscal service and some other areas outside of IRS that really merit your attention in FY15. And to that end, we're going to start our look at their technology trends with infrastructure. This is where we see some clear requirements to support the continued fiscal service merger. Consolidation of FMS and BPD infrastructures to the facility in Parkersburg, West Virginia has been delayed through 2019. And there are a lot of requirements to help build out the physical infrastructure there and help that facility do the work of two buildings in one. Secondly, big data and analytics, which unsurprisingly is a major focus across the board at Treasury, particularly at IRS in FY15. They're looking to use big data and analytics to better drive mission decisions from all of the taxpayer information that flows into their technology stack. For example, we see a requirement this year for increased compliance activities out of IRS around some major tax laws, and that creates a need for content and data management, integration, case management, and even some CRM capabilities. Fraud detection is a major point of emphasis for IRS's budget this year. Vendors and partners that can support that mission with visualization, analytics, and data mining tools will be strong requirements at IRS this year. And on a more specific note there, look out for the RFP for Phase 2 of development on the RRP program, and we'll talk about that a little more in a few slides. And finally, cybersecurity, which is always a concern at an agency that handles this much PII, and we'll see some healthy investments this year in really every category of the cybersecurity bucket. IRS also has that requirement to prevent identity theft, which combines identity management and some other security tools with some of the predictive analytics and other business intelligence capabilities. And here we have the Treasury organization as a whole. Rather than going into too much detail on what each of these individual offices and bureaus is doing, we're just going to focus on the two that are really driving mission behavior this year, and those two, of course, are the IRS and the Fiscal Service.
So starting with the IRS, which, if you'll recall, has 71% of the agency's IT budget. Now, you've got a couple of different insertion points here, but we really want to highlight two of them. The first is Operations Support, led by Peggy Sherry, and that houses the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. Second is Services and Enforcement, and that's where you're going to find almost all of the off-books IT spending at IRS. It isn't a huge amount, but it is still there. John Dalrymple is the Deputy Commissioner. And within his group, you want to keep an eye on two names and offices. The first is the Criminal Investigation Team, led by Richard Weber, and then the Wage and Investment Division, which is led by Deborah Holland. Both of them are going to have some pretty significant product requirements this year.
And here you see that Office of the Chief Technology Officer, which really is the CIO group here at IRS. Most of these branches speak for themselves, so I'm not going to get into detail on all of their functions, but there are a few groups and a few names that I want to make sure you're aware of. First of all, Terry Milholland still is the CTO here. Directly under him are Gina Garza, the DCIO for Operations, and Steve Manning, the DCIO for Strategy and Modernization. The cybersecurity group here, which as I mentioned will have a lot of budget behind it this year, is led by Sharon James. And finally, there's the Affordable Care Act PMO, headed up by Marla Somerville.
And lastly, we'll look at the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. Now, it looks like the former BPD will be taking on the IT operations of the Fiscal Service, and that's causing consolidation at the Parkersburg, West Virginia headquarters. Now, you've got two real groups to focus on here. First is the Office of Information Technology, which is led in an acting capacity by Kim McCoy. That's where you're going to find requirements like network management, storage, and servers. You're also going to want to pay attention to the Administrative Resource Center, especially if you sell financial or HR management tools, and that group is led by Doug Anderson. Now, those of you who have successful installs at other federal shared service providers, you can take that same story here to the ARC.
We're going to start Treasury programs with the IRS, taking a look at their largest investment in FY15. And just like HHS, that's the program supporting their role in the Affordable Care Act. IRS has some major development necessary in the next 12 months around compliance activities, data management, and behind-the-scenes information exchanges with HHS. And we're in phase 5.0 of this system at IRS, and their primary focus areas as a result are a little bit more specific. This year, they're looking at filing compliance activities and third-party data matching. That sounds jargony. What it means is there are real requirements here for case management, data mining, and real-time BPM, as well as requirements around information sharing, data quality and integration, and collaboration tools. And of course, the system carries hefty security needs because it will handle large amounts of PII throughout its life cycle. Look specifically for data protection requirements here, both in transit and at rest.
All right, next up is our second IRS program of the day, and it's the Customer Account Data Engine 2, or CADE-2 program. Now, this is essentially the back-end infrastructure that supports almost all of the IRS's non-ACA tax activities. Now, the first thing worth mentioning about this program, which is led by Jan Dunn out of the CADE PMO, is that it does operate on its own infrastructure. And that means that it does have requirements across the board. Now, the business case here doesn't go into too much detail about planned expenditures, and that suggests that they do have money that they can spend on almost any type of tool, and they've got the DME dollars to do it. Now, we think that there are going to be some demands here for new technologies and processes around data sharing to the various front-end systems that rely on CADE-2, as well as a new encryption capability. Now, this is a great time to get in front of this PMO, regardless of your technology, because there's real opportunity here to shape upcoming development requirements.
We're going to wrap up our look at the Treasury with another IRS program. This time it is the Return Review Program, the RRP system that I mentioned a few slides ago, which is IRS's new fraud detection and prevention tool. Now, this system has a little bit of a troubled past. Funding delays has severely impacted the development cycle, and most of last year was essentially lost. As a result, the legacy fraud detection tool is still operational, and RRP has yet to reach full operating capability. That means that just like CADE-2, this is the ideal time to meet with that program office and really start driving requirements around your big data and analytics tools.